to the Hit Play Podcast. We're your hosts, the Hit Players. James, it has been 2 years. Well, a little over 2 years now. We missed our birthday. But yeah, it's been 2 years since we started this podcast. Does it feel like 2 years?
Yeah.
Feels like 5. I guess the pandemic just kind of like warps any sense of time that we have.
I was more excited that we were going to get 3 episodes out this month.
Yeah.
After doing
Me too.
1 a month this year.
Shout out to the film industry for deciding to just halt, no work whatsoever. So thank you for that, because that allows me to do my true passion, which is podcasting. But we're here to talk about our top 10s, because we did a top 10 very early in our life.
Episode 16.
Episode 16 to be exact. And we don't recommend going back and watching that.
No.
I don't. Did you go back and re-listen to it?
I tried.
Yeah, it's rough.
Not just because I don't like the sound of my own voice, but those Discord days.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to have a discussion when we're just right across from each other versus okay, you can go, James. Oh, wait, what? What did you say?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on mute the whole time?
Pretty much.
So, yeah, I don't recommend going to watch that. So we're just going to redo it for you, because in the spirit of modern Hollywood, we're just going to remake stuff when we run out of ideas. So here we go. We're going to remake our top 10. Did you happen to pull up your top 10?
Yes, I did.
Because I pulled it up
mine
for you just in case.
So it was actually more of a top 5. We had multiple honorable mentions, and then I had a top 5.
Yeah.
The caveat for my list was my top 5 list was in chronological order, as I had watched the movies growing up, kind of showing the films that influenced me getting into filmmaking, and then when I was in film school, the kind of stuff that influenced what I wanted to make. I'm not going to do that this time because I already did it once, and I left out a lot of films, actually. Most of my honorable mentions.
I was going to say, you gave me a top 10.
Yeah.
You gave me a top 15 for your honorable mentions. I counted.
Wait a second.
I said, James, give me a top 10 and then we'll do a top 5. We'll break it down. And he gives me 15 movies just right off the bat.
I have 11. I have 11 for my honorable mentions, so maybe I missed 1 or 2. Admittedly. If I'm not going in chronological order, though, there are definitely some fairly consistent.
Let's do like a tier.
A tier.
Or however you want to do it. However you I did mine more of like a tier.
Okay. Well, my original list, I'll go over that first. So to start off, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I watched that when I was in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
I was in 6th grade. Absolutely blew my mind. I mean, still to this day, I look fondly back on that movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hugely influential to me. Loved it so much. Basically started. I liked filmmaking before that, but that was kind of when I was like,
Yo.
Yeah. So
everybody has one of those.
Mm-hmm. For sure. The next film I watched or put on my list was Enter the Void, directed by Gaspar Noé. Not the movie I was expecting to hear me bring up a second time. I have since. I don't think Gaspar Noé has made a good film since Enter the Void. I've kind of fallen out of favor with him. Nevertheless, whether it's the cinematography or just the approach to storytelling in that movie, equally mind-blowing to me. It's a lot of top-down looking at people. If you know the scene in John Wick where it looks like he's in, Miami Vice kind of style, whole movie is like that. And I had never seen anything done like that before. So it absolutely blew my mind. On top of that, there's a lot of like first-person perspective stuff, like Hardcore Henry before they ended up doing that. So less so the story, more so the visual effects and approach to the camera work in that film was super influential. Next up, when I was in high school, I saw There Will Be Blood, which that's still going to be on my list.
It's an awakening.
Yeah. I don't think that was the first Paul Thomas Anderson movie I saw, but I don't think it was, but it was definitely the first one where I was like, I need to know everything about this film, who made it, why did they make it, what was it like to film it.
It was the movie that
Every
made you
detail.
download IMDb.
Yeah. Following that, I listed Antichrist, directed by Lars von Trier. Yeah, that's definitely something I would pick. Can't say much else about that movie. And then the final two films I had listed when I was in film school, I was super into documentary filmmaking, but also kind of docufiction, this mixture between using real life like unprofessional actors or even just going out in real life and filming things and then mixing that with an actual written story. Two films I named was Horse Money, which was a Portuguese film, and Stray Dogs, which was a Taiwanese film. Honestly, when I revised my list, Stray Dogs, I couldn't think of anything to replace it. I'd probably still would keep it on my list.
Yeah.
I love that film. Horse Money, I think I just put it on there because it was similar to Stray Dogs, and I love Portuguese stuff, so I wanted to give it a shout out.
Shout out to the Portuguese.
Not much else I can say about that though. What about you?
Should I give mine?
Yeah,
All right.
your original list.
My original list,
Unedited.
unedited, was. Let me see if I counted these right. I think I counted 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. It was The Dark Knight. These are all. This is not in order. The Dark Knight, Godfather 1 and 2, Shrek, Goodfellas, There Will Be Blood, To Kill a Mockingbird, Dazed and Confused, Social Network, Terminator 2, 1917
Nice.
was my unedited original list. It's
Far more consistent than mine.
Yeah.
I think because I went throughout the course of my life, I skipped a lot of the like intermediary. Like
Yeah.
how does one movie connect to another? Whereas I feel like yours is fairly even keeled.
yeah. I'm not. Me and James have different viewing.
Habits.
Yeah, where it should be. I should say that my top 10 was all movies that I rewatch at least once a year. It's like no matter what happens, I have to watch these 10 once a year. And so I went into this revision with that same mindset of what are the 10 movies that if I had to rewatch this year, I'm picking. And I'll be honest, spoiler, a lot of it doesn't change. They're
Understandable.
just really good, solid movies. There's something in it for each of them. For me, there's something in it for me from each of them. Whether I'm just rewatching this and being like, this is high art, or it's just like in the case of The Dark Knight or The Godfathers or Goodfellas, or where I'm just like, you know what, I have an hour and a half to kill. I'm gonna put on Shrek 2, or I'm gonna put on Dazed and Confused. Like,
Yeah.
I have nothing better to do right now. Let me just watch something that I know I'm gonna enjoy for the next, 90 minutes or whatever.
That's understandable.
And then there's movies that just still leave me like jaw on the floor, like Terminator 2. Where I'm like, how did we do this? 30 something years ago, how does anybody do this? And it's interesting to see, but just to look back and listen to my thought process and being like, you know what, 23-year-old, 22-year-old Isaac was right.
That's good to know.
That guy kind of knew some things.
I feel like for me, it's difficult to make top 10 lists or just favorite lists because I look back on stuff in terms of like, what do I want to do right now?
Yeah.
And so I like cherry pick the stuff that's just going to be the most influential to what I want right now, as opposed to kind of having a consistent. I'm sure people would look at my list and be like, yeah, we know exactly what kind of movie you would like. But there's
Yeah.
it's harder for me to settle on like one or two things, a good solid list of 5 without it changing every year or two, just because it's like, well, I like this movie this year more than I did last year.
I think that's the thing about top 10s too, is when you have those, 5, 6, 7 movies that you really, really are just your core viewing habits. It's like, that's where you start to branch off.
Yeah.
Because, like, watching something like I don't know, Dazed and Confused, right? Just to use as an example, has like opened me up to the genre of slice of life, like coming of age comedies that I don't necessarily personally as like a writer, I just would never have thought to pursue that. And now having seen Dazed and Confused and then seeing like, Superbad, Booksmart, all those movies that we've talked about, it's like, whoa, I could do something like that. I feel like, which is I think good for, and also as a viewer of just like, oh, I'm gonna go watch Licorice Pizza because
it's a good coming of age movie.
Yeah, I want to go see a good coming of age movie by a director I like. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's what a top 10 should be. Now, if you're just going off the IMDb top 10,
you're not gonna have much luck.
We have a problem. I have a problem with that. And I'm guilty of like sometimes be like the film bros movies, right? But
other
like,
people say this movie's good.
Pulp Fiction is not in my top 10. I don't think I would put it in my top. It's not even my favorite Tarantino movie.
Is that like Pulp Fiction is one of the best movies of all time, but it's not even Tarantino's best film?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Rocky. Rocky 1 is the critical darling, right?
Yeah.
Set the ground stage for all these sports movies.
And
but
it's not the
everybody
best Rocky.
likes Rocky 4 the best.
That's true. I feel like for me, I don't really rewatch movies. And so for me, trying to make a consistent top 10 is more about what films am I still actively acknowledging, like this has influenced how I either watch movies today or still approach either filmmaking or storytelling in general.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, what's the word for it? Like cherry picking about, I'm probably not acknowledging the fact that I used to watch Star Wars all the time when I was a kid. That probably had way more influence than anything else on this list.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that as greatly as I do some of these other films that are
for sure
conscious choices. So what would be the first revision that you would make to your list?
I hate to do it. I think I'm dropping out To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. I
was very, very high on To Kill a Mockingbird. Very high. Still one of my favorite books. Mm-hmm. Still one of my favorite movies. Probably the best book-to-screen adaptation that we have seen. One of my favorite protagonists. Obviously, the meaning behind both the book and the movie. Very impactful, especially nowadays, unfortunately. Do you want me to tell you what I replaced it with?
Yeah, go ahead.
I replaced it with Interstellar.
Interstellar.
I've seen it 3 times since then, and every time I'm just like, God damn, this still hits. Every time.
Does To Kill a Mockingbird go down to like 6th or 7th?
It would go to, no, it'd go to like, I don't know. I think it would go to like 11.
It'd go to the honorable mentions.
I think so. Or like, it's like 10, 9, 8, 11.
You don't want to disrespect the movie.
Right.
But at the same time, there's some recency bias.
That's why it's really hard with having to go back because you're like, oh my God, like Attack of the Clones is so good. But then it's like,
yeah,
Rogue One. Rogue One is still a thing. We have to, what do we do here?
Yeah.
It's really hard going back and being like, what do I drop out?
Mm.
It's either that or Shrek that I would drop out.
You can drop out either one. I assume you're going to end up replacing either of them.
Yeah. I don't know.
So what about Interstellar brings it up then? Where was it before and why does it now enter
I think when we did... Because we talked about it with Nolan, where I said that it was my second favorite Nolan movie. It's S-tier quality movie. But there was just something missing from it. At least before I made the list, where I was like, because I even mentioned it in the honorable mentions in the OG video, but I was like, something is. I think the caveat was I didn't want to put a second Nolan movie because I didn't want my fanboy to show.
Now you don't care,
and now I'm like, I don't care. 2 years later, I've learned to not care. So it just hits every time, that emotional beat of the daughter and these music that swells when he's leaving his daughter, and just like the pure, just like, what is going on? Like the way you felt about 2001, I felt about Interstellar. It was the movie that got me into writing and storytelling and movie
Mm-hmm.
making. And it was the whole time I was just like, what is happening? What am I watching? What am I witnessing? How could we do this? How is this a thing?
And how can I get in on it?
And how can I do it? And it just has never left me. So I was just like, I should put it in the top 10. Because I'll still rewatch it.
Now, you do realize that if you were to actually enter a black hole,
Oh, God, here we go. Connor, if you're watching, I apologize. But it's in my top 10. So, yeah.
is it you have two Nolan movies in your top
Yeah.
10, top 5 now. Is it below The Dark Knight or is
Yes.
it equal
Yeah, it's
footing
still
with
below
it?
The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. If Dark Knight's a S tier, it's like a S minus. The only problem I have with it is it's a little corny when it comes to the whole theme of love. And Anne Hathaway's character is just like meaningless, more or less.
Classic Nolan.
Yeah. But other than that, amazing from beginning to
Amazing
end.
movie. Nice.
Has Timothée Chalamet, our favorite actor.
I forgot. That's right. That's right.
So, has our greatest cameo of all time, Guy Pearce.
Are there only two Timothée Chalamet movies that you've ever liked? I assume that.
Dune.
Dune and
The King is good. I like The
The
King.
King?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
the
right.
Netflix movie.
That's
I
right.
like The
He's
King.
in that. Not bad. Not bad.
Do you have any revisions?
Basically, my whole list. Just because of the nature of how I made the list the first time around, I excluded a lot of stuff that now looking back I understand as a far greater grip on me. Why I put blue as the warmest color in the honorable mentions, I
I think it was because you had talked about it like 4 weeks straight.
That's true. That's right. Most of my honorable mentions are films I had already talked about.
Yeah. There's a couple Terrence Malick movies in there.
You know what's actually really funny? I went into the depths of my old computer and found an old top 10 list I had made, and it was far more accurate. I made this like back when I was probably like a junior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Far more accurate today than the list that I made back then. Blue is the warmest color, has to be my number one. I don't know why I excluded it, even with how much I talk about it.
Yeah.
I should admit that this probably
We just have to be unapologetic when
Yeah.
it comes to these lists.
it's really, I should just admit that it's my favorite film.
These
of
are
all
our
time.
movies.
I don't know why I did that. My second revision out the gate too, Y tu mamá también, Alfonso Cuarón, Emmanuel Lubezki. Easily my favorite movie from those two. I don't know why. Every time I rewatch that movie, I just feel like, you know what it is? I love that movie so much because there's just this, not just because it's a coming of age movie, but because there's a youthful energy behind it. Sometimes with coming of age movies, I don't get that, and it's why I don't really like the genre that much. But with Y tu mamá también,
They feel like it's older people trying to relive
yeah,
their
and there's
glory
almost
days
this
and not like
nostalgia, but also a momentum, like running towards the future, kind
Yeah.
of, that I get out of that film. I love it. It's just so fun, in my opinion. But
Is it in Spanish?
Yes. Alfonso Cuarón did Great Expectations, and he hated it. And he was like, I'm leaving Hollywood, going back to Mexico,
Doing my own thing.
gonna do my own thing.
Hasn't it's been working out for him so far.
So far. Absolutely love those two movies. Probably my Blues the Warmest Color is probably my number one. I have to give credit where credit's due. But Y tu mamá también, it just gets better every time I watch it. And I don't watch it often, which is probably the best. I don't think that's the kind of movie you want to watch all the time. You might get depressed if you do. But right away, those two I have to add to my list. I would probably take out 2001 and Enter a Void because even though 2001 is it had a big impact on me, it was more foundational than it actually is inspirational, I think. Whereas there are just stylistic elements to Blue is the Warmest Color and Y Tu Mamá Tambien that I would enjoy in any movie. If every movie was filmed like 2001, I don't know if I would enjoy every film. As much as I enjoy 2001,
Yeah.
it works for that film.
Yeah. It works for the time, too.
Yeah.
Because everything pre, like, 74 is filmed like that.
Yeah,
where
you
it's
kind of have that expectation going into it.
longer takes and a lot of static
Yeah.
movement
So,
going on.
2001, great film, but it's far more foundational to my love of film than it actually is influential. Enter the Void, I'm just replacing because it's more of just a personal favorite of mine as opposed to something that I feel like I don't know if anybody should aspire to be like Gaspar Noé or anything that he directs, but it's still a really interesting film if you haven't seen it. If you ever want to experience what it's like to take mushrooms, by all means try Enter the Void. But those are going to be the first to go, in my opinion, and I would replace them with those two films. So those are more obvious revisions. The next revision is a little more tough, though, for me. So I kind of wanted to avoid having two films by the same director, like you did with Nolan.
Right.
But I
Just do it.
really couldn't decide. It was a toss-up, though. They're basically the exact same for me, between There Will Be Blood and The Master. The thing with The Master, though, is there are parts of it that I enjoy even more than There Will Be Blood, but I don't necessarily enjoy the entire scope of the film swimming through it. There are individual scenes and moments where I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But There Will Be Blood is a far more consistent film throughout for me. That being said, though, even if I keep There Will Be Blood, I still am debating changing it with a film that you rewatched recently, and that's No Country for Old Men.
Yes.
Those two movies are
So similar.
so they're just the perfect parallels for each other. They're like forbidden twins.
They're like Armageddon and Deep Impact.
You could say. Friends with benefits or no strings attached.
Yeah, right.
But honestly, it's a toss-up between those two, and it would probably just go with how I'm feeling that day, you know? There Will Be Blood is a fantastic, almost a Western, I guess, whereas No Country for Old Men is more of like a modern, I guess, neo-noir is the way that people might describe the genre of that film. The appreciation I have for them differ, though. With There Will Be Blood, again, I like it because it has a foundational element for my love of filmmaking. Whereas I feel like No Country for Old Men, there's almost like an objective sense of quality to it. Like, if you want to watch good editing, good camera movement, good music, even though there's barely any. Like, good action, good acting. There's just every element of that film is so meticulous that the fact that it doesn't feel overly dramatic or pretentious in the way that the movie like 2001 is, that's just a neat little, ship in the bottle that I like to return to. But I might keep There Will Be Blood because it's just a fun film to watch.
There is something to be said about compact and concise fundamental filmmaking.
Yeah.
Which, it sounds pretentious when I say it out loud, but it's like people look at these greatest movies of all time, like No Country for Old Men, The Godfathers, if you will, like 12 Angry Men or something like that, where they're just simplistic in their premise. It's a guy who stole money and is getting hunted by both the law and a killer.
Yep.
But it's the layering in the execution of it that makes it like a million times better. You know, the whole themes of like fate versus like self-determination versus what is fate. Just stuff like that is like mind blowing, and it's all set in some small town near the border of Texas and Mexico, where it's like, this is good. It's really good.
To that extent, I might favor No Country for Old Men a little bit more than There Will Be Blood. But there definitely is something to be said about just nice, concise, one and done.
And it's 2 hours. I was
Yeah.
very surprised when it was just like, just boom, put it on at 8, went to bed at 10:30. It was like perfect.
If you can go to sleep soundly after watching Country for
Well,
Old
I
Men,
didn't, but you know, it definitely leaves you thinking.
disturbed.
Yeah. Yeah, the ending came up, and I was like, "Wait, what? Rewind? Is that actually the ending?"
That's a
like,
film that
no
for
way.
me I appreciate far more. I've appreciated it far more over time than I just did when I first watched it, because
True.
I think honestly when I first watched No Country for Old Men, I loved it for all the different layers it had.
Yeah.
And as time has gone on, I loved it for just how fundamental it is.
Mhm.
Kind of stripping back the layers and just getting at its simplicity underneath everything.
It's Cormac McCarthy for you.
Cormac McCarthy for you. So those are immediately. I would just take off the first 3 films on my list and replace them with Blue is the Warmest Color, Y Tu Mamá Tambien, and probably No Country for Old Men, right off the bat.
It's a good one.
Do you have any more revisions to your
I have a
list
lot
you
of
wanna make?
honorable mentions,
Honorable mentions.
but I don't think I have anything that I would change.
Okay, because I got 3 more films on my list I'm changing right off the bat. The next film was Antichrist by Lars von Trier, which
That's a selection, by the way. I just looked it up, and I was like, "That's a selection."
I'm actually going to replace it with another Lars von Trier film. This one's a little easier to digest, depending on if shaky cam makes you sick or not. I'm going to replace it with Breaking the Waves, which I have just as much to say about that film as I did Antichrist. What I like most about Breaking the Waves, honestly, the thing with Lars von Trier is that I started watching a lot of his new stuff, and I enjoyed it pretty well. But as I've gone back to watch his older films, he's grown to add more. It's the same thing with No Country for Old Men, whereas like his new stuff has a lot of layers to it that you can watch and appreciate.
Yeah.
But as I go back, his stuff is so much more stripped down, so much more fundamental. I just appreciate that a lot more. What I love about Breaking the Waves a lot, and Antichrist had the same quality too, is that the combination of cinematography and editing focus so much more on the emotions of the characters than they actually do the story that's going on. So that every scene comes more as just almost a collage art of things that just have emotional impact on you, rather than actual like exposition dumps and characters explaining themselves or even doing things. I just appreciate that more. It's definitely an extreme version of that. There are films that are more, a mixed bag of they've taken the influence that Lars von Trier did or had with Breaking the Waves and Dancer in the Dark, and kind of moved on from there. But definitely, I think Antichrist, as much as, for me, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And I love horror movies. But if I'm not trying to, if I'm trying to make friends, I want to replace that with Breaking the Waves, in my opinion. Great film, but nevertheless, that is what I would take. As for the final 2 movies on my list, I had Horse Money and Stray Dogs. Honestly, Stray Dogs could stay. But if I had to replace it, I would probably replace it with, honestly, probably Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Really interesting.
Not to say that it's like similar, just I'm getting rid of it from the list and
Yeah.
I'm just finding
Yeah,
another
yeah.
movie I feel strongly about. Same
Sure.
with Horse Money.
Sure.
But I said it in my review of the film. It was everything I want Hollywood to start doing. The approach to visual effects, and how that informs the storytelling and the characters. That's the direction that I want Hollywood to go into. And the fact that it was not only extremely well done, as in it did everything that I wanted it to do,
Yeah.
but was super popular.
Yeah.
Won Academy Awards. Like, there's a chance.
They captured it. Had the zeitgeist for a hot minute.
Yeah.
It was probably a good like month and a half.
Yeah.
Where it was the movie.
In the same way that like Into the Spider-Verse did for 2D animation what I wanted it to do, and now it's influencing everything else.
Yeah.
I want that to be what Everything Everywhere All at Once ends up doing. That did everything that I felt like Hollywood had to do.
Sure.
And I hope that it has the same impact and influence going forward, in my opinion. Outside of that, any other movie I could add to the list is kind of a toss-up. You know, for me, what makes a film great, or when I look at the list, what really stands out are films that either approached filmmaking in a way that I wanted to see. And it was just like, this is the best example of what I feel needs to be done. I feel that way with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I felt that way with Blue with the Warmest Color. I felt that way with Y Tu Mamá También. Or there's just that tight, consistent, one and done. Like you get that with No Country for Old Men. You get that with Breaking the Waves. Outside of that, there are tons of films I feel similar about, but they're just on even levels with that. Like, I could replace Everything Everywhere All at Once with Singing in the Rain, and I would honestly still feel the exact same way, where I'm like, if there's just an approach to sound and color and light and visuals that it's almost like there's a love for cinema.
Yeah.
The fact that you can mesh all those things together, it's like, why there's so few movies that feel like they take advantage of that.
Why can't we make movies like this?
Yeah. It's like those films to me take advantage of that to its fullest potential. And so I could go back and forth between either one of those. Same thing with No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood. It's like I feel the same appreciation for what one does as I does the other. That was not.
And they're not like giant blockbusters either.
No.
I mean, none of the movies you mentioned are really giant blockbusters.
Force of habit. Sorry.
But it's like no. That's a good thing though. It just shows like there is quality in everything that's not number 5, top 5 of the box office earnings.
For sure.
Like, there is quality there to be had. It's just we need to put that up.
But I definitely have some additions to my honorable mention list.
Yeah, I got a couple.
So I'll let you break down what you got.
Well, I was wondering, do you have any? Because we've seen a lot of movies over the 2 years. A lot of movies. Are there any that you think? You said Everything Everywhere All at Once. But are you, any that you would look at and say, those might crack?
The top 10?
Or they're like, they're hanging out. They're like top 15.
Social Network.
Top 20. Okay.
Social Network for sure.
Oh, that's one of mine, I think.
Yeah, that was in my honorable mentions last time. Again, it's just like
simple, smart,
simple, fundamental, real tight narrative.
David, it's a director and a writer at their peaks. Just, I can't even. It's hard to describe that
potential.
movie.
Yeah, honestly, I made a top 10 or I made a top 5 list of just movies I had the most fun watching, and I threw Moneyball in there.
Moneyball's a good one too.
That would also probably be.
That was going to be one of mine where I rewatched and I was like, "This is good."
Yeah, that's like the best way to describe it. Is it's good.
Yeah,
just solid filmmaking on every level, and I just appreciate that.
Might be my favorite Brad Pitt performance.
Might still go with
or
the
it's Troy. One of the two.
One of those two. River Runs Through It. Shout out to that Brad Pitt episode.
Or Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh, God. Or Assassination of Jesse James, which is not going to be anywhere near my top 10 list, that's for sure. Definitely Social Network stands out the most for me, in my opinion.
For sure.
What about you?
We haven't talked about it on the pod because I rewatched it on my own. Or watched it on my own. Heat is like the GOAT bank heist movie.
We talked about it during the romance episode, actually,
Did we?
during Valentine's Day.
I don't remember.
I remember. So
This is why you don't work 60 plus hours, kids. You forget things.
the thing with Heat that I remember we talked about how the first time I watched it, there are entire B, C, and D plots about their home lives and their relationships.
I think I remember.
That the first time I watched it, I'm like, get this stuff out of here. I just want to see the
Then
movie.
you're like, oh, this is what makes it.
And then you're like, this is what makes it such a
This
good
is what
movie.
makes Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember us talking about that. Yeah, just like I put it on and I was like, 3 hours. Come on now. Like, why do we have to have 3 hours? Why is he talking?
If you're going to see Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, you want that to be as long as possible.
Yeah.
3 hours.
And
long.
they're not at their peaks, but they're probably like LeBron 2019, 2020, where it's like he's clearly a step like down, but he's still really good.
That's the thing about. I feel like that's why we appreciate it though, because if it was at their peaks, it would almost be too much to handle.
Comprehend.
Yeah. Whereas because they're not at their peaks, but they have their just the best.
Yeah.
Their legacies. You're like. That's what I feel like we appreciate about it the most is just two great actors that we all appreciate as having good careers.
It adds to the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's how I feel about Irishman to some degree, where it's like the four legends really of mobster, mafia movies, just one last go at it. It's like, it's sad. It's very sad. But,
Is that your favorite Michael Mann movie?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen a couple. Ford versus Ferrari, Public Enemies.
Ford versus Ferrari was James Mangold. Was it not?
Maybe it was.
I believe it
Maybe
was.
am I getting them mixed up?
He's doing a Ferrari movie right now.
Okay. That's what it was. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else I've seen from Michael Mann.
He did Last of the Mohicans. He did Ollie with
I've
Will
not
Smith.
seen all the...
Collateral.
I've seen Collateral.
That's a good one.
Good one.
He did Thief with James Caan.
Don't think I've seen though.
That's a good one. What else has Michael Mann done? Oh, Miami Vice.
Manhunter.
Mm-hmm. And Miami Vice as well.
I feel like there's one more I've seen.
Take
Where
your
is
time.
this filmography?
He definitely has a type of movie.
Yeah. No, that was the thing when I was going through his filmography one day. I was like, this is interesting. But I'm really excited for Ferrari. I'll say that.
Because you have nothing else this season to look forward to as a Ferrari fan.
Yeah. But, yeah, definitely my favorite Michael Mann movie. I've only seen 2 others.
You got to get on
So
that.
it's at least top 3.
Nice. All right. So your honorable mentions, you're adding Heat, you're adding Social Network and Moneyball.
Well, Social Network was on the top 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Friday Night Lights, the
Friday
movie.
Night Lights. That's a good one.
Rewatched it when we did our sports. Well, I rewatched it
Same.
before we did the sports, and then I rewatched it for the sports again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, man. Like, every sports movie past this is the watershed moment for, like, post-2004. This is, if we're going to do segues, Friday Night Lights is to sports what 2001: A Space Odyssey is to sci-fi.
Bold claim. In my opinion, what I think I appreciate about Friday Night Lights is that it didn't feel like generic or stereotypical of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
The worst example being Remember the Titans.
It feels like I don't know about worst example. Better calm down.
My apologies.
Okay,
Mighty Ducks. We'll go with that.
that's better. I like that one. That's better. But it feels there's also a sense of documentary style
Oh, yeah.
filmmaking, which Peter Berg is obviously like
Known
the
for
master
that,
at,
yeah.
and that's his style. I mean, it translates 1-to-1 perfectly into the television show.
Mm-hmm.
That just kind of gives it this sense of
Realism.
like this was real people in the day back in 1980, whatever.
Honestly, I think the first time I watched it way back when, if it wasn't for the fact that I felt like I recognize Billy Bob Thornton. I thought it was a documentary.
Yeah.
I legitimately was like, wow, this high school had camera crews following them around. That's so cool.
Yeah. There's something to be said about the fabrication of some facts in the, but it's not as egregious as like, hey, remember the Titans. But regardless, as terms of just being a movie, it's still probably my favorite sports movie. I can't think of any. Maybe, I mean, other than Moneyball, like I can't think of anything that would surpass it.
I think we talked. I have two questions. The first one, I think we actually covered in the sports one. Is it your favorite ending to a sports film?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
I
so.
think
it's either
I
that
would
or
say so
Rocky,
too.
but yeah,
My second question: favorite Peter Berg film?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Because I've seen the Deepwater Horizon, and then there's I didn't see the one about the Boston bomber.
Patriots Day.
Right. Did he do Sully?
He did not do so.
Because I remember he went on a trend of like recent traumas.
Him and Mark Wahlberg.
It was yeah.
No,
yeah.
he did Patriots Day. He did Deepwater Horizon. He did 13 Miles.
Lone Survivor.
Lone Survivor. And then going back, he did Three Kingdom. And
He did what is 13 Miles?
13 Miles was another Mark Wahlberg one where he has to transport like a bomb.
Okay, no, didn't see that one.
It was basically a Netflix
Yeah, it's my
movie.
favorite Peter Berg movie. Just based off of what you've told me, it's my favorite.
He has such a consistent style that I feel like I do love his movies.
Yeah.
That is just I know what I'm gonna get out of every single one of them. So I can't not appreciate the fact that I'm just getting the same thing. Same with Michael Mann, where it's like the difference between a film like Collateral or Thief is just the runtime
Yeah. And the main actor.
and the main actor. Yeah.
There's something to be said about directors who do the same thing over and over. And I don't think it's bad things, to a degree.
With the case of Michael Mann and Peter Berg, I love their films.
Yeah.
And so it's like I appreciate that and to an extent.
Because, I mean, Scorsese has made a whole career of just the same formula, just
Pretty much.
the same actors, just change the era and the soundtrack corresponding to that era.
This might be a question for another time, but do you appreciate a director who tells the same story or a director who uses the same actors? I think I appreciate the same story more than I do the same actors. Again, probably another
I don't
question
know.
for another
Yeah.
time, so don't feel like you're...
That's a good question.
Put you on the spot.
Because, I mean, there's something to be said about a director-actor relationship that goes decades.
I know
where-
what we're talking about next
when
episode.
when they start to go towards the end,
Yeah.
where you're just like, because I mean, Scorsese has gone on record, and I'm only talking about Scorsese because it's the most iconic, director-actor relationship that we have. But he's been talking about how many times he's worked with the De Niro, where like they'll cut something, and De Niro and Scorsese will start walking up, and De Niro will just be like, I already know, and just so then Scorsese just turns around and goes back to the camera and is like,
That's
all right,
funny.
well, we're taking it from one.
That's funny.
There's something to be.
I believe that.
It's so when you see that come out on the final cut
Mm-hmm.
on camera, or on screen, you're like, because I mean, The Irishman is so fucking good. It's so poignant and so emotional, and you're like, God, man. Not my favorite Scorsese, but there's definitely
Yeah.
the collaboration, I think, between those two, and the love they have for one another just bleeds
I see.
through.
It's like the buildup of everything that they've
Yeah,
done previously.
yeah, exactly.
Now, do you have all the 3 honorable mentions I have listed are not films I think I've talked about before. So do you have anything on your list that has never even been brought up on this podcast
Yeah,
before?
Aviator.
That's right. you watched it recently.
I watched that for the first time. Not probably the least formulaic of Scorsese's movies, other than maybe like The Departed.
Understandable. Both Leonardo DiCaprio
Correct.
collaborations as well.
Hey, we should start doing that more often.
I know.
Shout out Killers of the Flower Moon. But yeah, I watched it because I mean I was going into it like, I'm just gonna watch a biopic about this guy.
Did you know anything about him?
I knew nothing
beforehand?
about Howard
No.
Hughes. I knew nothing about the movie. I just knew that it was Leonardo DiCaprio. The only thing I knew about it was Nolan at one point wanted to write a Howard Hughes movie. Which, watching it, that was just in the back of my mind, was like, how would Chris
How
do
would
this?
Nolan do this?
We're on a first name basis. And
Are you happy with the Scorsese result?
I am, but I'm really excited. I would really pay a lot of money to see it.
I would if Leonardo DiCaprio reprises that role.
Yeah. But
That would be fun to
it was
watch.
very good. It's probably like closer to the top 20 right now, considering I just saw it maybe a couple months ago. But we'll see where it goes. Maybe in 2 years it'll crack the top 10.
You're gonna rewatch it a few times.
Yeah,
before-
I think I would
before you-
rewatch. I think I would rewatch that movie.
Nice. We have to do our next episode has to be director actor combinations. Talking about
There's a lot.
Scorsese.
There's a lot.
Mhm. We got Scorsese and De Niro, Scorsese and DiCaprio,
DiCaprio.
Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg.
Maybe we can skip that one.
Fair enough. The two.
What are your
So
some
I
of your
have
honorable
three
mentions?
films on my honorable mention list that I don't believe I've ever talked about on this film. First one is, Weekend, directed by Anju Haig, I believe his last name is pronounced. I think I have mentioned on this podcast before, but that is again just a solid one and done, very short film too. Super concise drama, no extraneous elements like action or murder or anything like that. It's just a relationship between two people for one weekend, and that's it. You can't get any more basic than that, but it's just good, heartbreaking human drama. Love that film. Again, the simplicity of it, the fundamentals of it. Another one I want to give a shout out to that I actually probably should go on my actual top 5 list in terms of overall influence. But the movie I Killed My Mother by Xavier Dolan.
Oh, dark title.
Dark title, not that dark of a film, although it is somewhat. I believe it's partially autobiography for Dolan. He's made a lot of movies since then, and they've been somewhat hit or miss for me. But this was the first movie he ever made, directed when he was 19 years old, which is very impressive because this movie is super solid. A little less concise and put together than some of the other movies I say would, doesn't have that same feeling of just being a good, bottle story. But nevertheless, his approach, again, there's just that kind of energy. He was literally 19 when he directed it. So when I talk about youthful energy in this film, it's like he had nothing but that,
I was gonna say he pulled a Ben Affleck and wrote, directed, produced, starred. Surprised he's not a cam op.
He might have been. He was too busy in front of the camera to do that.
He does it all.
And he's done that for almost every single film that he's made too. In my opinion, he's a very good director. But again, it just goes back to that energy in the movie where it's like maybe the Xavier Dolan now wouldn't make the same kind of choices that he would making that movie, but because you're really seeing just a young person put it all out there, there's a almost lack of pretension to it that I just appreciate more than anything. And again, I mean, when I was in high school and I learned that a 19-year-old could make a film that good, I was like, well, shit.
This is his best movie that you've seen? Have you seen many of his movies?
I've seen almost all of his, movies, honestly. Tom at the Farm is, I believe that's the full title. Correct me if you're looking at it.
Tom à la ferme.
Yeah, he's from Quebec, so all of his films are French.
French.
Tom at the Farm is a good one, and Mommy is another good one. Honestly, even though those films are better, there are more stylistic choices made in them that fit those films, but not so much the kind of stuff that I personally. The film Mommy, for example, it's a great film, but it's filmed in a 1:1 aspect ratio. Very, very, and it's incredibly intentional, done on purpose, and it works perfectly. Like by the end of the film, you totally get what's going on and why he made that artistic choice. That's just not the kind of thing that I personally enjoy that too great. Shout out to Zack Snyder's Justice League. This movie is presented.
Should we shout it out?
3-4. The film is 4 hours long, superhero film, and it's in 3-4.
What are you doing, Zach? Who are you?
Last movie I want to. It was okay. Last movie I want to give a shout out to for my honorable mentions, and this is a bit of a recent one for me. I mentioned Breaking the Waves, directed by Lars von Trier. Cinematographer on that movie was Robbie Mueller, who is a Dutch cinematographer, I believed. If I knew that he was going to be the greatest cinematographer of all time when I first watched Breaking the Waves, I would have seen this film sooner. But the movie Paris, Texas, directed by Wim Wenders, written by Sam Shepard, with cinematography shout out to Sam Shepard, great writer. Cinematography by Robbie Mueller. This movie is pure cinematography. That's just in a nutshell. Honestly, I think I might have to watch it again if it breaks my actual top 5 list. But this movie is just pure visuals, just pure light and camera. I mean,
movie making in its purest form.
When other directors say they want to emulate what you do, then you know that
probably
you did
something good.
I mean, just the absolute master of nighttime shots. It is incredibly beautiful. Probably one of the few films I feel like out of the like wallpaper genre of cinematography where it actually serves a purpose.
Yeah, there's meaning behind
where
it.
It doesn't just look beautiful to make film school bros.
It's not Wes Anderson.
Yeah, there's the use of color in that film is so meticulous, so purposeful that it just sucks you in, and you can't help but just notice what they want you to look at.
Yeah.
And even when you don't notice it, going back and watching clips of it, you're like, I didn't even see this, but it just makes you feel something as you're watching it, even if you can't name what it is. If it's uncomfortable, or if it's happy, or if it's by the end of the film utterly depressed. Just cinematography in its purest form, in my opinion. Absolutely just. I thought Robbie Mueller was good because of Breaking the Waves, but Paris, Texas
goes to the nth degree in Paris, Texas.
Is like greatest of all time kind of stuff right there. Would highly recommend, even if it is kind of long and sad. But honestly, outside of that, I made a completely separate top 5 list of the movies I had the most fun watching.
Okay.
Just pure
fun
entertainment.
Okay.
Just head empty, no thoughts.
Give it to me.
All right, number 1.
I have an idea of what A1 is.
What is it?
Revenge of the Sith is on there.
That's a good one. I've talked about that before too. That's a good one to just watch.
Greatest Star Wars.
Best Star Wars film in my opinion. Revenge of the Sith is a good one. That's one where I like it because you can just watch it. Like you don't have to get in the mood to watch it. It's such a everything is there.
You become entrapped in it as it goes on.
Yeah, it's almost like just a good standalone film in my opinion. Revenge of the Sith is definitely worthy of being on this list.
There is I want to say like a 45-minute chunk where it is like opera.
I mean, it's a space opera for a reason.
It's just like you are encapsulated into this world and you are so engrossed of what it's like. Forget the bad CGI.
I don't know why you're not spoiling it. It's Revenge of the Sith.
What?
The sequence where it goes from Order 66 to
I was gonna say
about even before that.
Before that, it's like it's not too much before that, but it's where Obi-Wan and Anakin say goodbye to each other.
Yeah,
all the way until the end.
It just hits the
where
gas.
It's just boom, we're gone. And there's a specific sequence when Anakin is looking over the Coruscant, he's looking out,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell that him and Padme are like looking at each other across Coruscant,
Mm-hmm.
and the music selection. First off, John Williams is a goat, but that song hits every time. It's like a religious experience happening. Like you are watching
That's
just
funny.
something otherworldly happening in front of you.
I want to watch that.
And it's just like, I remember we were watching, I was just like, this is the greatest thing of all time.
Yeah. It's like I don't even realize how good it is when I'm watching it, and then I'm like, oh my god, I haven't breathed in the last.
And then there's the
half hour.
whole, obviously, the Order 66 moment. It's wonderfully, probably one of the best
And then-
montages in action
And
history.
then it's like you get that, and then it goes from that to Obi-Wan versus General Grievous, and then it goes
Yeah.
from that to Yoda versus Palpatine, and it goes from that
and then
to
you get
him
that
versus
that heartfelt moment between him and Obi-Wan and Padme, where she's like, he's not evil, this and that, and he's like, I'm sorry, and the music is just hitting on every note, and it's swelling, and it's a little cheesy, the acting, it's a little wooden, it's a little stiff, the movement, you know, it's just shot for shot,
Yeah.
but you're like,
it's good.
it just hits.
Yeah.
It just hits. I don't understand it because it's, you know, George Lucas passed way past his peak. But it just, for some reason, it just hits. It's
Yeah.
really, I don't know if that's like a happy accident or what.
I think when I was making this list, I wasn't even thinking about like franchised stuff, because if I am gonna include franchise material in this list, Revenge of the Sith, in Marvel's Infinity War,
Top Gun 2, baby.
and Goblet of Fire, those are the three from other franchised material that I would add to this list of fun things.
I interrupted, I'm sorry.
No,
Continue
no,
your...
you're good. I thought you were gonna get Speed Racer, which is my number one.
Okay, yeah, that was... that's on brand.
I should also say, I actually thought about this a little bit. When I think about like why these movies were just so fun to me, it wasn't because there was the sense of just like stepping on the gas and not getting off, you know.
Yeah.
Because Revenge of the Sith certainly has that. Dark Knight, I know when I rewatched that recently, I was like, yeah, this is pretty intense. Way more than I thought it was. For me, when I look back at this list, I see that there's almost more of like a, like a pendulum, or more like a Newton's cradle of like momentum carrying back and forth between, like there's an inertia that every scene where one scene takes you all the way over here and then the next scene takes you all the way over here. I don't get that so much with Revenge of the Sith because I'm just watching it because I'm a freaking Star Wars fan.
Just watching it unfold.
When it steps on the gas and it just goes and doesn't stop, that's enjoyable. But, there's I don't get that same feeling of kind of swinging back and forth between extremes like I do with some of these films. Like with Speed Racer, for example, the visual effects in that movie and the way that they're integrated with the storytelling is just phenomenal. Like, I still stand with the statement that the approach the Wachowskis took in that movie is better than anything Marvel has ever done.
Well, I mean, that's not a very high bar.
Not recently, no. Definitely not. Next movie I would mention was Moneyball, which I think does it through dialogue. So much of the story is just characters talking to each other more than actually playing baseball. But it's so engaging and engrossing because every character's motivation and conflict is so apparent in every conversation they have that you swing back and forth every single scene. Next movie,
One of the best sports montages of all time. That streak hits it, and then it just culminates with Hatterberg hitting the home run.
Yeah, great moment.
Fantastic montage.
You can't write stuff like that. Everything Everywhere All at Once, I already talked about. Singing in the Rain, I also already talked about.
Classic musical.
Those movies just have such a love and appreciation for filmmaking that is just like, what's the word? It just gets me, It's like it's infectious. Infectious?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
right.
the pronunciation. Finally, Boogie Nights.
Yes.
I couldn't resist.
That's one I forgot to put on my honorable mentions.
Couldn't resist another Paul Thomas Anderson film. But in my opinion, what sells Boogie Nights is the fact that it goes back and forth between every character in that film. So, and it's not just each character getting their individual storylines, all happening at the same time, but the actual arc of the entire film, where you expect to learn exposition, you're getting it from this character, and that's the exposition for the entire film. Where you expect there to be the kind of low point of the film where it's like everybody is struggling, you only see one character struggle, and you really get engrossed in that. And it's like, yeah, everyone else has their struggle that you kind of are aware of, but it's like it's that one moment in the donut shop where you're just like, that's the lowest that we don't have to get too much into everybody else, but we focus on this one for a reason, So the way that ping pongs back and forth between every single one of those characters is so engaging, so engrossing. That final scene where they go and buy cocaine from Alfred Molina is just like pure cocaine magic.
What is going on?
Yeah. That's when it
but
steps
it's
on the gas.
understandable when we, retrace our steps of where, like how these characters got here.
Yeah.
It's
a
roller coaster.
Oh, yeah.
To put it, to simplify it in the best way possible, it's just an amusement park ride that you get on and you're just like, just go.
Yeah.
Just take me. Whatever you're going to do, just do it. From the get-go when, the emotions is blaring and you're going on that, he's doing the Scorsese oneer through the club. You're like, I'm on a ride. I'm in it. Let's do it.
For sure.
And you don't get let off the entire way.
Again, and it's just like there's just that energy to it that I just love, seeing. It just engages you so well.
Yeah.
I think
you can tell a 20, 30-some-year-old
who
director
wouldn't take no for an answer on anything. Yeah.
Definitely was a little bit of a Napoleon, to say the least.
In my opinion, Boogie Nights is probably my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. Yeah. Even though There Will Be Blood is one of my favorite movies of all time, it's one of those where it's like, There Will Be Blood is one of the best movies of all time. It's not the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie. I would go with Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Easily.
I don't know about that.
No.
But
well,
it's
personal.
It's number 2. Yeah, it's number 2.
Personal.
At least.
Honestly, The Master would probably be my number 2.
Oh, God.
The Master is one of those films that is just pure cinematography. I mean, you watch it. I
just got bored.
For me, it's the fact that I just appreciate just how meticulous crafted every shot is. Where I'm like, there's a scene where they're on a riverboat in San Francisco, I think, and they go under the Golden Gate Bridge. And just the colors in that scene. I'm like, was this digital? Was it retouched? Or did you just Robbie Mueller this and that's just what it looked like and you somehow are a genius and capture that? I don't know, man. Again, pure cinematography.
There is the, what was it, when Joaquin Phoenix runs out of the building Cabbage and they're just like, you go behind the scenes and you're like, oh, that's a, 1,000-pound camera that they just were like, let's put it on let's put it on a track.
Yep.
Or let's put it on a steady cam because this is gonna be a handheld shot, and you're like,
okay,
well, who works for this guy?
I know that IMAX is like we can sell our film to people now. Jordan Peele, Paul Thomas Anderson, and Christopher Nolan. We only need 3 customers.
Charge X amount of money.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, Christopher Nolan, you want to put it on? You want a handheld IMAX rig?
We'll put it in the nuke for you.
Sure. No. Yeah, pretty much.
We'll just put it on the bottom of the Trinity site, just pointing up.
So that's my list, I would say.
That was fun.
Yeah. Dad, I know you're watching this. I know you probably have seen Paris, Texas, but if you ever want to rewatch it, I watched the behind the scenes. They use split diopters in so many scenes in that film. Definitely great appreciation for dual focus in that movie.
Where does Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves rank for you?
Number 0.
Because it's the greatest of all time.
It's the greatest of all time.
You can't quantify it.
The definitive D&D experience.
I just play my D&D experiences just like that.
Yep, just like that. Actually, now that Connor's not here, we don't have to lie. Our sessions are exactly like that.
Apparently he watches the pod now because I went to go play Warhammer with him and he was listening to it. He's like, "Thanks for shouting me out."
In the animation episode?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's like, cool. So if you're watching this, Connor, thank you. I guess. Just start doing that every once in a while, just throwing it. Thanks, Connor.
Yeah. We know you're watching. Get back to work. How about I mentioned this film earlier, but Dune. How's that rank for you?
You looked at my notes. It's an honorable mention.
Honorable mention?
Yeah. It's a epic. It's the modern day epic adventure, similar to something like I don't know, like Lord of the Rings or something, but maybe a little older than that. Maybe something like Ben-Hur. I don't know.
Interesting. Here's a question for
Where
you.
it's just like this grand adventure and this grand storytelling in this massive world, but it's still somehow very. I don't know, man. There's some moments in there. There are some montages or like some fast cuts going on in there where I'm just like, this is like I'm having an outer body experience right now. Specifically when they get they're in the desert, him and his mom, and they're under a little thing, and he breathes the spice, and he just starts like he just starts tripping.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this, but that scene I rewatched. I remember I rewatched this movie a couple months ago, and I rewatched specifically. I was waiting for that scene, and it still hit, and I was like, just something that I cannot put into words about how that made me feel. I was like, this is cool.
Nice.
Not Denis' best work, I would say, but I enjoyed it. Top 20.
Yeah. For me, there's not a whole lot of rewatchability in some of these movies. Like, I would say that like with Dune and Aviator, you know, that it's like The Aviator is a good film, but I don't know. There's just not a whole lot of.
There's not anything there for you.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I would watch it. The scene where he is in the bathroom washing his hands until he starts to bleed,
and
and he waits for the guy, and then he has to run out of the bathroom.
Yeah,
that's really where his OCD really first begins to
click for you.
And it's like I would watch The Aviator up until that scene, but it's like that's not a film that I would rewatch outside of.
It does go for a little bit too long.
Yeah,
and there's not really a character arc, but I mean that's just Scorsese movies. Just don't really have that character arc.
That's fair enough. We got to talk about.
They just end up dying.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I watched The Departed a few weeks ago, and it was one of those things where it was like, even knowing the twists at the end, it's kind of like, you know, there's still that levels of satisfaction that you get being out of like, this is the character arc. He just dies.
Yeah.
You know, it's like at the end of the day, that's as fulfilled as these people are ever.
There's a very
except for Mark Wahlberg,
morbid take on life.
Yeah.
When Scorsese's characters don't have arcs, they just stay the same person. Because even, I mean, Goodfellas. One of the things that works for it so well is at the end of all of it, Henry Hill is still like, I mean, this life sucks.
Yeah.
But like, I wouldn't have changed anything.
Yep.
He literally says that, and he's like, you know, everything was ours for the taking, and now I'm just a schmuck. And it's like, and he says it with such sadness.
Yeah.
Or like, not even like a hint of regret.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, I shouldn't have chosen this life. It's just like, I got caught.
Yep.
Whatever. It is what it is. It's like, that's
I just got to pick up the newspaper every
very
morning.
profound.
Yeah. Good job, Scorsese.
But
All
I mean,
right.
that's why he's one of the GOATs.
Any last words? Any other movies you want to shout out?
I don't think so. No. No, not really.
Understandable. I want to give a quick shout out to In the Mood for Love. This would be a honorable mention for me. I couldn't think of a my favorite Wong Kar-wai movie, but
Should we do the IMDb top 10?
no, we should not. If you want to do that, we have Return of the King right here. This movie is all three of those extended editions.
Quality.
Quality stuff right there, in my opinion. And then Hell or High Water. Sicario is probably my favorite of the Taylor Sheridan movies, I would say.
Yeah,
But that one is
because it's that not Mystic River.
Wind River, I think
Wind
it's
River.
called. Also a good movie. Actually, a good Jeremy Renner movie.
Don't have a lot of those.
Um,
Might not have a lot of those. I'll cut that out. Bad joke.
Yeesh.
Anyways, I was trying to find the IMDb top 10,
IMDb,
but I can't find
I know
it.
what it is. It's Dark Knight and Shawshank Redemption.
I know those are the top. It's like Godfather,
Casablanca,
Casablanca,
Shawshank Redemption,
Shawshank Redemption,
and
here we
Dark
go.
Knight. Possibly Paddington.
Shawshank, Godfather, Dark Knight, Godfather Part 2, 12 Angry Men, Schindler's List, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Pulp Fiction, Fellowship of the Ring, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
That's a good one. Honestly, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is another one where it's just like it's a solid film that you can rewatch and find something new every time.
And then 11 through 20 is Forrest Gump, Fight Club, Lord of the Rings, Inception, Empire Strikes Back, The Matrix, Goodfellas, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 7, and It's a Wonderful Life. 7's a little too dark for me. That's what that and Zodiac I was looking at and I was like, these are really quality
Really?
movies. I enjoyed them the first time. They're maybe like top 20, but they're just too dark for me.
I could put Zodiac on my honorable mentions.
Zodiac.
I enjoy that one.
Okay, maybe
Very
I
good.
would put. Okay, I put Zodiac in the honorable mentions.
But that's all the honorable mentions I will name this time around. You have to wait until next time where we do our.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks guys for watching this episode. Next week we're going to talk about something, I'm sure.
Collaborations. We got to do that.
Thank you for 2 years. Thank you for almost 300 subscribers.
300 subscribers.
We're like at 298.
Who are you people?
Why? One
How?
question. Why?
Why? We know that you didn't sit through the Terminator episode.
I have documentation that says everybody only gets through like 45 seconds.
I hate the fact that that's our most popular video. I'm like,
Yeah, there's so many much better ones.
yeah, honestly. Just go rewatch the D&D one or the animation one.
Or just, I don't know, anything post
This one.
Dune.
Anything post Dune. Yeah. When you start seeing us on camera, start from there.
Yeah, that's a good.
Pretty much.
That's a good way to put it. All right, well, we're out. We'll see you guys next week. Take it easy. Have a good weekend. Have a good day.